With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yolana Weeks.
Our top stories. St. Kitts Nevis Climate Action Minister advocates for stronger Caribbean partnerships in climate fight.
Solar energy remains a viable option for developing a strong electricity grid for St. Kitts. Mr. George Gilbert says roadwork at Southwell Drive, St. Kitts will include an overhaul of the drainage system.
Prime Minister Drew advocates for OECS collaboration on regional challenges in St. Martin. ECCB gears up for 9th Annual Growth and Resilience Dialogue focused on extraordinary excellence. Violent clashes erupt in St. Lucia over electoral reforms. 76th OECS meeting concludes in St. Martin. Internationally, global flight turmoil as London's Heathrow closed by huge fire. Now, the details. At the close of the 2025 Green Climate Fund GCF Regional Dialogue with the Caribbean, on Thursday, March 20th, 2025, the Minister of Environment and Climate Action for St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Joyle Clark, passionately called for enhanced regional collaboration in the face of climate change.
The regional dialogue brought together regional national designated entities, regional direct access entities, regional accredited entities, civil society organizations, and a host of climate stakeholders from the Caribbean region. It goes without saying that this regional dialogue was truly regional in character, as it ought to have been. We had the opportunity to speak as one region, articulating both our concerns and our aspirations in fighting the impacts of climate change on our countries.
The dialogue, hosted in St. Kitts and Nevis, convened regional and national stakeholders to address Caribbean nations' unique challenges. Dr. Clark emphasized the disproportionate impact of climate change on small island developing states, SIDS.
As small island developing states, we are at the front lines of the battle for resilience against the impacts of climate change. While we are responsible for less than 1% of global greenhouse emissions, we bear a disproportionate portion of the cost of its devastation. And this is something that we should never fail to continuously reiterate to our global community. We bear the cost in terms of lives lost and affected, social infrastructure that is consistently destroyed by climate events that occur earlier, more frequently, and with greater intensity.
She further highlighted the threats to livelihoods posed by rising sea levels, warming oceans, and drought, stressing the need for collective solutions to water, food, and energy insecurity.
And as our region faces water stress together, food insecurity together, energy insecurity together, we must find the solutions together.
The minister lauded the government's commitment to strengthening partnerships and advocating for equitable support.
This past week, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis sees yet another opportunity to demonstrate our steadfast commitment to strengthening partnerships and advocating for equitable support to effectively address the challenges faced.
Dr. Clark also acknowledged Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew's dedication, noting his continued engagement with Caribbean leaders on critical issues such as food, water, and energy security. She affirmed the government's commitment to engaging with Caribbean countries to ensure the dialogue's outcome to lead to
sustainable regional roadmaps for energy cooperation, logistics and transportation, and debt for climate swaps,
as articulated by Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley.
The failure of a land-based solar power plant agreement between Solec Power Limited, Lake Lanch, and the St. Kitts Electricity Company Skelec birthed a new partnership. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis notified the public of a new agreement with the Republic of China, Taiwan, to develop a 50-megawatt land-based solar PV and battery energy storage plant that will foster industrial growth and enhance energy resilience on the island. The solar power plant, which would harness sunlight and convert it into electricity, would be fed directly into the national grid. Construction is expected to begin in the second quarter of 2025. According to Energy Minister Conwys Maynard, during an In Focus interview on March 19, heightened discussions commenced between the two parties.
So right now there is actually a delegation in Taiwan led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the energy transition manager from Skelec is actually there. And one of the primary reasons for that is to finalize the framework arrangement of how we're going to partner, not only on a solar farm and battery energy storage facility, but also for our grid upgrade. So that is in discussion, and the details of how that looks, will come to the front in due time. But that is being worked out. But in addition to that, because we're not just looking at singular sources anymore, SCELEC is pursuing a process to invite the best in the world to present a proposal to have a solar battery energy project that will replace, in effect, the one that was not successful that we met and that the developers were unable to meet based on the guidelines or the deadlines that they had agreed to and the terms that they had agreed to. And so that process is now ongoing.
Maynard explained that the proposed solar energy plant should not be a standalone solution for energy supply, but should be supported by a generating plant to help meet the electricity demands when necessary.
Some people argue that you should be completely turning to renewables. And they go further to say, if you had a solar plant, even with battery, then you wouldn't need to improve your infrastructure. I want to dispel that notion completely. For a solar farm, for instance, the one that was proposed, it would produce energy for about, let's say, 12 hours on average. Some from solar, some from battery. If we have a demand of, let's say, 30 megawatts, and let us say that that provides 15 megawatts of power for 12 hours. Then your generators then only need to provide 15 megawatts. But what happens to the other 12 hours that there is no sun and there is no battery left? You still need a generating plant to produce all the power you need. And so you can't focus just on improving your renewable energy offtake through solar and battery and not have the capacity to run your entire grid with backup when there is no renewable energy. So that was a fundamental error.
Though solar and storage are the fastest renewable energy technologies to develop and deploy, they still require many arduous steps to complete and maintain, including applications to interconnect to the grid application analysis, equipment procurement, grid upgrades, and financing. With the Republic of China Taiwan on board with a solar energy plant, it is expected, like in other projects and initiatives, that St. Kitts and Nevis's longest diplomatic partner would spare no effort to work closely with the federal government to fulfill its solar energy mandate. In recent years, the use of solar energy has been on the rise in the region. This has been driven by a desire to address climate challenges and to combat rising energy costs. For many decades, St. Kitts and Nevis has relied on diesel fuel and natural gas imports to meet its energy needs. Roadwork began on Southwell Drive in East Bastille on March 18, 2025, spearheaded by the Ministry of Infrastructure through the St. Kitts Public Works Department. Southwell Drive, the access road to the Newtown Dental, Health and Community Centers and the Tucker Clark Primary School, had long reached a state of disrepair that continued to worsen over time. The road's condition was raised on several occasions by residents and road users, but the top layer of the road was removed on March 18. WINN FM was on site and witnessed workmen utilizing specialized heavy equipment to remove the damaged asphalt surface. The new road will be resurfaced with asphalt. Mr. George Gilbert, Director and Chief Engineer at the Public Works Department, spoke with WINN FM. He said the work had been a long time coming, but hinted at an issue with an important piece of equipment that also delayed other projects.
We had some challenges, in-house challenges. For example, the asphalt plant was not working, but we get it back up and running again. And this is one of the first roads, major roads, with our refurbished asphalt plant. Also in the corridor Southwell Drive, we had some of the drainage which were not draining. So we had to remove those drains and actually redesign the drain so that they can actually flow. So that's what another challenge in the corridor there.
WINN FM learned that because the Ponce pasture area is below sea level, drainage issues are likely to arise in the area. Scheduled road work on Southwell Drive was estimated to run from March 18 to March 30, during which time it would not be open to vehicular traffic. However, despite notice of the road closure, workmen encountered traffic issues.
We had vehicles parked there. In spite of the fact the notice went out, it's still there. We have to get the police involved to get them moved out of the corridor so we can get the work going. But we are pushing ahead, and we had to mill the whole road, take out the whole surface, and we moved the base. Water department is also inside there too, changing pipes. So, we have to kind of wait on them to go through. But we are all working together as a team, going through, and we are actually doing our best to get it done in as short a time as possible.
Whilst commuters sometimes get frustrated with the length of road closures when resurfacing work is occurring, it's a process that can't be rushed. The chief engineer advised that road resurfacing is a process that has to be done very carefully to ensure that the new road is safe and durable. In a quest to prioritize sustainability in all its work, the St. Kitts Public Works Department recycles material waste.
When we remove the material from the road, we actually store the material and we use it to fill out dirt roads when they become worn and torn, especially after we have heavy rain. You find that most of the dirt roads are damaged in St. Kitts, and we actually use some of that to mix it with the earth to fill out those areas. So it's being, as you said, recycled.
After several complaints and calls made for Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, parliamentary representative for East Bastia, to lobby for the road's repair, he said he was pleased that the work had finally commenced at Southwell Drive.
We are now at the point where we are able to deliver that road as I promised. I know it might have caused some inconvenience for the residents and users, and as usual, whenever I had an opportunity, I would always apologize, but I always gave the assurance that we will deliver the road. And now that Public Works were able to get the machineries fixed and ready, this happened to be one of the very first priority projects that they took on, and I'm very grateful for the support from the Minister of Infrastructure, the Honorable Conrad Maynard, and his entire team, in ensuring that we live up to what we say we are going to do in delivering on our promises. This was one that I personally spoke about. I gave them that assurance that the road would be done. So I am very pleased this morning that Public Works are here in their full force, ensuring that we deliver on this road. But after 9 years, I am happy that I am able to deliver this road to the people of Fons Pasture.
While attending the 76th meeting of the OECS Authority in St. Martin, Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew of St. Kitts and Nevis emphasized the importance of regional collaboration to address common challenges faced by Caribbean nations. In an interview with Korea Christopher, the Acting Director of Communications for the Government of the Virgin Islands, Dr. Drew highlighted that small island territories, whether independent countries or territories, share similar issues, necessitating the need for organizations like the OECS to foster cooperation. Prime Minister Drew stated that governing requires local action and participation in regional organizations, allowing leaders to discuss critical issues and find solutions beneficial to their countries.
Right, because when you're governing, you're not just governing on the ground. You have to govern within regional organizations, which are very important for the advancement of your country. And so when you come in person and you can meet other leaders and head of states and governments and so forth, you can really discuss the issues and distill them to the benefit of your country.
Climate change, for example, threatens tourism products, requiring a unified regional approach that individual nations within the OECS cannot tackle alone.
No country within the OECS by themselves can do it. So, but coming together, we can have a regional approach which can help to resolve the matters for us as individual nations and countries or territories. And therefore, that is why it is important that we participate in events like this. Not just to extend the point a little bit, if you were to look at the leaders of any other country, you see that they travel from time to time.
Dr. Drew also noted that leaders of other countries travel to operate within regional and international environments to protect their country's interests.
The President of the United States, the President of France, the President of China, wherever they are found, you see them travel from time to time because they have, a local responsibility, of course, to take care of people, but they have to operate within a regional and international atmosphere and environment to make sure that their country, the countries are protected.
Addressing the St. Kitts and Nevis diaspora in the Virgin Islands, Prime Minister Drew acknowledged their pride in their heritage and potential to contribute to their home country while living abroad, further pushing the idea of regional collaboration through connectedness. The Prime Minister mentioned the diaspora unit that would allow them to contribute skills, talents, and investments without returning physically.
And one of the things I said to them that, you live outside of St. Kitts and Nevis, but you can still contribute. So you don't necessarily have to return in person, but we are creating a diaspora unit that functions in such a way that you can contribute to your country even though you're away. So I asked them to still contribute. They can still invest. They can contribute their skills and talents and so in different ways. So they don't necessarily have to come back to St. Kitts and Nevis. But one thing I'll say is that you can take them out of St. Kitts and Nevis, but you can't take St. Kitts and Nevis out of there.
Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew. In collaboration with its partners, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, is preparing to host the 9th Annual Growth and Resilience Dialogue on April 10th and 11th, 2025. The conference, themed In the Pursuit of Extraordinary Excellence, promises a transformative experience that will generate practical solutions for the region's future. Senior Project Specialist Sybil Welsh states that the dialogue will feature insightful and interactive presentations.
We can expect interactive presentations. So it's not that you're going to just come and listen. It's really engaging and interactive. And we can expect ideas that ask us to rethink, relearn, and to transform ourselves, our communities, our economies, and our region in the process.
The dialogue will address critical areas for regional development, including indigenous tourism, civil data infrastructure, sports tourism, and electric vehicles. Welsh emphasized the importance of moving beyond incremental improvements, drawing inspiration from Governor Antoine's 2023 challenge to double the region's GDP within a decade.
We're not talking about the regular run-of-the-mill sort of movements, transformation or change. We're talking really about leapfrogging. And by leapfrogging, we mean to do extraordinary jumps forward, not just incremental. And this takes its cue from Governor Antoine's 2023 challenge that asks the question, what would it take to double the region's GDP, its gross domestic product, over a period of 10 years.
Indigenous tourism will be a key focus, spotlighting regenerative, sustainable, and green practices. The dialogue aims to explore how preserving local history and culture can contribute to the region's economic growth. Chief Annette Sanford, the first female Kalinago chief in the Commonwealth of Dominica, and Donna Regis, the Secretary General of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, are among the thought leaders slated to present.
When you preserve a history, when you preserve a culture, you really ensure the longevity, the survivability, and the growth and development of the people, the country, the community, and the region.
The conference will also explore the importance of civil data infrastructure for informed decision-making and policy action. Discussions will cover data interoperability, data resilience, and cybersecurity, and a live cyber simulation for IT professionals will be featured. Dr. Curtis Charles, Director of Academic Affairs at the University of the West Indies Five Islands campus in Antigua and Barbuda, and David Farrell, Principal of the Carbon Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, are among the experts who will contribute to that discussion.
Economic development requires data. We need data to make informed decision making, to drive policy actions. And so we can expect that we're going to talk about data interoperability. How can we look at different data sets, not beyond the normal? Remember, we're talking about extraordinary. Yeah. So beyond the normal that we talk about in terms of GDP, which is important, in terms of debt service ratio, which That is also important. What other data sets in our ecosystem that we can merge with our standard data sets to create even more robust assessments and analysis? And we're also talking about data resilience and data infrastructures. So what sort of infrastructure are we required to move into this new era of technological advancements?
Sports tourism will be highlighted with a special appearance by Thea Lafour Gadsden, a triple jumper and gold medalist at the 2024 Olympics from the Commonwealth of Dominica. The dialogue will explore the role of sports development and investment in showcasing regional excellence. Discussions on electric vehicles will focus on energy security and environmental sustainability, featuring innovators like Dr. Lihanna Henry, CEO and founder of Rum and Sargassum Inc., and Dr. Wayne Archibald, founder and executive director of Green Solutions International St. Kitts Nevis Incorporated. The ECCB's 9th Annual Growth and Resilience Dialogue is open to everyone.
President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Daniel Best, has reaffirmed the bank's commitment to regional development despite ongoing challenges. Speaking at the annual media conference in Bridgetown on Wednesday, Best emphasized that the bank's core mission is to reduce poverty and transform lives through sustainable, resilient, and inclusive development. As part of this mission, the CDB provides loans and grants to borrowing member states. Last year, the bank approved US $304 million and disbursed US $323 million in both loans and grants, with St. Kitts and Nevis among the beneficiaries. Best highlighted the bank's swift response to natural disasters, particularly in wake of Hurricane Beryl, which devastated parts of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada.
When Hurricane Beryl devastated sections of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada, within 72 hours of the storm, CDB deployed personnel to affected areas to provide emergency support and approved a US $5.5 million relief package to each country. As we look forward to the future with all its uncertainties, but more so its opportunities, I can think of no other word that encapsulates my vision for the bank than rebirth. Rebirth signals the bank's renewed focus on delivering excellence to the people of this region. We will practice excellence in each stage of every process, whether we are providing policy advice, appraising and implementing projects in our countries, or formulating country engagement strategies. As we support our Caribbean in the march towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, excellence will be our hallmark.
The CDB is also working to fill the void left by geopolitical policy changes that have impacted regional funding. The reduction of aid from the United States has led to shortfalls affecting various projects, including those in Haiti.
Our region faces uncertainties that we have never before contemplated. Geopolitical tensions arising from inward-looking or nationalistic policies have the potential to stymie trade and growth. And the withdrawal of financial aid and technical cooperation places our already vulnerable populations at even greater risk. Friends, the Caribbean Development Bank has been engaging in regional discussions to better understand the scale and the scope of the challenges confronting our clients and shareholders. And we stand ready to support the people of the region as they navigate these uncertain times. The bank recognizes that it cannot address the region's issues by itself. And so, partnerships and resource mobilization will be key tools in our arsenal.
The CDB has launched a US $460 million program under its 11th cycle of its funding, 2025 to 2028, focusing on poverty alleviation and human development across borrowing member states. At least 35% of these funds will be allocated to climate financing.
This will support adaptation and mitigation projects, post-disaster interventions, disaster risk management, and biodiversity preservation, production resilience, to strengthen private sector development and improve economic infrastructure, social resilience, to enhance educational outcomes and social protection systems. And on this, in recognition of Haiti's unique challenges, we will increase our support to them to maximize development impact and foster long-term resilience.
Reviewing the region's economic performance, CDB's Director of Economics, Ian Durant, reported a 1.7% expansion in regional output across 15 territories excluding Guyana. This reflects a slowdown from the 2.5% growth recorded in 2023, signaling a diminishing post-pandemic recovery momentum.
Growth rates, however, varied across borrowing member countries, with Guyana and Haiti standing out as outliers. Guyana was again the standout performer, with its economy surging by 43.5%, fueled by increased oil production and continued expansion in its non-energy sectors. As a result, when we include Guyana's performance, regional growth rises to 8.8% in 2024, up from 6.6% in 2023, highlighting the country's significant influence on regional economic growth. On the other hand, Haiti remains in crisis. The country continued to grapple with political instability, escalating gang violence, and high inflation, contributing to its 6th consecutive economic contraction. For most other countries, growth was moderate.
Meanwhile, service exporting economies, many of which have now exceeded pre-pandemic output levels, grew at a slower rate of 1.6% in 2024, down from 2.8% in 2023, as economic activities stabilized. The tourism industry remained the primary driver of growth, with stopover arrivals reaching 6.8 million in the first 3 quarters of the year. More than half of borrowing member countries surpassed pre-pandemic levels, with some setting new records. On the topic of inflation, Durant noted that it continued to moderate in 2024, following global trends, though price levels remain higher than pre-pandemic figures. Several governments have maintained cost of living support measures introduced in previous years. Additionally, unemployment rates have continued to decline across most borrowing member countries for which data is available. Stronger economic activity contributed to improved fiscal performance across the region. Most governments achieve primary surpluses driven by higher tax revenue collections. However, public expenditure also increased, largely due to recurrent costs such as public sector wage hikes and greater capital investment in infrastructure. Despite a 3.3% increase in debt levels, nominal GDP growth helped lower the region's debt to GDP ratio from 55.6% in 2023 to 50.9% in 2024. Nonetheless, nearly half of the borrowing member countries still have debt ratios exceeding 60% of GDP, presenting ongoing risk to debt sustainability. Governments continue to take measures to improve fiscal and debt sustainability, with several successfully reducing their debt to GDP ratio.
In regional news, violent clashes erupt in St. Lucia over electoral reforms. DBS St. Lucia reports.
Protests in Dominica turned violent Wednesday as police clashed with citizens opposing 3 controversial electoral reform bills: the Electoral Commission Bill, the House of Assembly Bill, and the Registration of Electors Bill. Earlier this week, United Workers' Party leader Dr. Thompson Fontaine urged Dominicans to protest the parliamentary proceedings. Videos on social media showed protesters hurling missiles and police using tear gas to disperse crowds. In a DBS News World interview Thursday, Dr. Fontaine insisted the demonstrations were largely peaceful until police escalated tensions. Several people are now in custody.
At one time, the crowd began to shake the barricades because they mounted barricades to prevent us from getting access to the parliament or getting anywhere close to the parliament. We were kept several thousand meters away from the parliament with barricades, police barricades. So when the crowd began to rattle those barricades, the police opened fire, firstly with rubber bullets and later with tear gas. In the process, several persons were injured and several others arrested.
In anticipation of the protests, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit revealed plans on Tuesday to request assistance from the Regional Security System, the RSS, to help maintain order. In light of this, Dr. Fontaine says he wrote to the chair of CARICOM, Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados, asking her not to deploy RSS troops. It remains unclear whether RSS personnel were present on the ground during Wednesday's protests.
As far as I'm concerned, there is no state of emergency in Dominica. There is no national crisis. There is no threat to national security, nor is there a threat to regional security. So why is it that the RSS forces are being activated? So I'm extremely disappointed with the Caribbean leaders. I'm extremely disappointed that they would go ahead even we forewarning, to have these RSS troops on Dominican soil. So we view this as a hostile act against the people of Dominica.
When Dr. Fontaine spoke with our news team on Thursday morning, he said things were far from calming down.
The individuals there have started fires on the road. The road is now completely blocked up. What this means is that the entire north of the country, the main artery into Roseau in the south, is now blocked off. Nothing is able to go through. Persons are not able to report to work. Persons are not able, because a lot of people work in the city of Roseau. You have school children, you have schools that are there, you have coming from the second major town, Portsmouth. That entire area is blocked up this morning, and we would expect at some point the police to intervene, and so it's not clear what's going to happen.
The Skerritt administration has defended the proposed bills, arguing that they will strengthen the electoral process. However, Dr. Fontaine remains firm that further measures are necessary to ensure free and fair elections. According to him, Dominicans have been waiting 30 years for electoral reform. For the DBS Newsworld, Zane Romulus reporting.
76th OECS meeting concludes in St. Martin. Grenada Broadcasting Network has the details.
The meeting, which wraps up, saw a major milestone in regional integration as St. Martin officially became an associate member of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. The two-day gathering, held at the Secret Resorts and Spa Hotel in Anse-Massam, brought together heads of government from across the Eastern Caribbean to tackle pressing regional issues, including economic development, climate resilience, security, and sustainable growth. A key highlight of the meeting was the official ascension of St. Martin to the OECS, an event hailed as a significant step toward greater regional cooperation. Chairman of the OECS Authority and Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Philip J. Pear, welcomed St. Martin into the OECS family and underscored the need for stronger unity among member states.
The ascension of St. Martin to the OECS marks an important moment in our regional journey. On behalf of the governments and people of this region, I welcome you, St. Martin, wholeheartedly to the OECS family. Your membership is clear evidence that there continues to be strong demand for deeper engagement within the OECS. In strengthening our internal machinery, our associate members must not feel they are more appendages to the affairs of our union, but active contributors to the integration progress. Consequently, we must ensure their meaningful participation in economic initiatives, policy discussions, and regional actions. This may be an opportune time for us to sync the role of associate members, structuring their engagement in a way that strengthens the OECS.
Director General of the OECS, Dr. Didacus Jules, noted that the many global challenges, from economic instability to climate threats, demand greater collaboration. He stressed the importance of agility and strategic alliances, particularly in dealing with food and fuel security, and emphasized the resilience of the Eastern Caribbean.
And the reason is simple. We are each other's first responders. We are each other's biggest champions. When natural disasters strike or markets shift, we respond more effectively when we act in concert. In a time of swollen global unpredictability, we stand firm, knowing we have built a region-wide support system that holds the welfare of all its members at heart.
Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell was among the regional leaders engaging in discussions on the way forward for the OECS. The Grenadian leader has been vocal about strengthening regional cooperation to address economic and climate-related challenges that also impact Grenada. A press briefing will summarize the key outcomes and strategies agreed upon, decisions that could have direct implications for Grenada's economy and regional partnerships in the future. Cherian Blackman-Stephen, GBN News.
We now bring you these international reports. I've heard from the fire service and police officials who both confirmed that the cause of this fire at the electrical substation in West London that feeds power to Heathrow Airport remains unknown. However, they stress that there is at this point no indication of foul play. But separate to that, a senior figure at the National Grid described the nature of that fire as, quote, extraordinarily rare, and said that she could neither rule in or rule out the possibility of sabotage. And perhaps for that reason, and of course because Heathrow is such an important piece of national infrastructure, we're told the police investigation is being led by Scotland Yard's Counter-Terrorism Command, although that at this stage is being described as routine. And of course, separate to that, Heathrow Airport still eerily quiet, no planes taking off or landing, more than 1,300 flights, of course we know, cancelled during Friday's closure, and that will have an enormous impact and ongoing spiralling effect for passengers stranded at travel hubs, not just here in the UK, but all over the world. Heathrow has warned that travel disruptions could go on for days. The reality is it may take them days just to get to grips with the scale of the disruption and delays that this event will have caused. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera at Heathrow Airport in London.
Russia and Ukraine accused each other on Friday of attacking a major Russian gas pumping and measuring station near Suja, despite a US proposed moratorium on strikes on energy infrastructure by either side. Video posted on social media was said to show the fire in a part of Russia's Kursk region that Moscow's forces recaptured from Ukraine earlier this month. Reuters was able to verify the location but not the date. The Kremlin said Ukraine had blown up the facility in an act of terrorism, while Kyiv said Russian forces shelled it with artillery in a provocation and denied any involvement. Meanwhile, this was one of Russia's biggest drone attacks on the Black Sea city of Odessa. It injured 3 teenagers and sparked fires late on Thursday, and it came as the Czech president was in the Ukrainian port city for talks. Petr Pavel is a vocal backer of Kyiv and has led an effort to source more than 1 million artillery shells for Ukraine's war effort. The long-range drones buzzed into the city in several waves, damaging infrastructure, residential houses and commercial buildings, the Interior Ministry said. Around 25 cars had been set ablaze at a car repair shop. We couldn't do anything. We stood there and watched everything go up in flames, said its owner, Inna, who didn't give her last name. Alexander Kovalenko, a military analyst, told Reuters that Russia used new tactics for the attack, having the so-called kamikaze drones descend from a higher altitude than usual and at high speeds to make it harder for Ukraine's air defences. Ukrainian, US and Russian delegations are due to meet in Saudi Arabia separately on Monday to discuss the details of the US deal, officials have said. Moscow has rejected a more comprehensive 30-day ceasefire.
Israeli military forces say they have intercepted 2 rocket launches from northern Gaza after alerts were activated in the southern city of Ashkelon. That's according to the Reuters news agency. Meanwhile, the Israeli Supreme Court has suspended the government's decision to sack the head of the Domestic Intelligence Service. The injunction will be in force until the tribunal can hear petitions against Ronan Bar's dismissal. The Israeli cabinet voted to sack Ronan Bar. He had been at odds with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ever since the Hamas attacks of October the 7th, 2023, each of them accusing the other of serious failings. Well, the intelligence service, Shin Bet, has also been investigating claims that top aides of the Prime Minister have been lobbying on behalf of Qatar. Shin Bet is Israel's domestic intelligence agency. It plays a key role in the war, and its activities and membership are closely held state secrets. Mr. Bars characterised the decision to oust him as politically motivated. Well, our correspondent Emir Nada in Jerusalem gave me more details.
For the many thousands of protesters who've been out in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, again protesting amongst many political decisions by the government, protesting this particular attempt to dismiss the head of the intelligence service. What we're going through is a crisis of Israeli democracy and an attempt by the Prime Minister to cast aside anyone who stands in his way, who's a critic, or indeed attempts to bring scrutiny to his rule. The orders from the High Court today putting this temporary injunction, a freeze on the dismissal of the head of the intelligence after the vote by the cabinet last night gives around 2 weeks for petitions to be heard against the dismissal until the 8th of April. Some ministers in the government have already said that this is an overreach, that the court doesn't have the authority to issue this injunction. But we're entering unprecedented waters, uncharted waters in this essentially a constitutional crisis here in Israel, where those who are criticising the moves by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are saying that Israel has never been through a moment like this before, and is accusing him of an attempted power grab.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: St. Kitts Nevis Climate Action Minister advocates for stronger Caribbean partnerships in climate fight.
Solar energy remains a viable option for developing a strong electricity grid for St. Kitts. Mr. George Gilbert says roadwork at Southwell Drive, St. Kitts will include an overhaul of the drainage system.
Prime Minister Drew advocates for OECS collaboration on regional challenges in St. Martin. ECCB gears up for 9th annual Growth and Resilience Dialogue focused on extraordinary excellence. Violent clashes erupt in St. Lucia over electoral reforms. 76th OECS meeting concludes in St. Martin. Internationally, global flight turmoil as London's Heathrow closed by huge fire. Thank you for listening.